Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Tony Graham on Binjang 91.5, and today I'm talking to Matthew Dickerson, the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, and we're going to be reviewing the last year, or this year that is, all the things that have happened, or most important things that have happened in the area, particularly though in relation to Wellington. So first of all, let's start off with Australia Day. How are you going there, Matthew?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Tony, and thanks for the opportunity again to talk to yourself and obviously your listeners. And just this is a nice opportunity just to reflect back on the year. A lot of that happens at the end of any year, obviously, but it's nice to just look back and see what's been achieved, what things have happened, what things have gone well, what things haven't gone well throughout the year. It's something that I would do internally anyway, but it's nice to be able to talk to you and your listeners about exactly that.
Okay, so I assume that it's the same format for Australia Day this year, or should I say for the coming new year, as it was for the beginning of this year.
Yeah, exactly right. And certainly you'll remember back to 2023 Australia Day, we made a decision at Council at the end of 2022 to change things a little bit with both ceremonies, both in Dubbo and Wellington. And there was a little bit of controversy at the time, and I don't mind a bit of controversy. If there's something you've made a decision for all the right reasons and some people aren't happy with that, that's great to get that feedback. But one of the important things we changed for 2023, and we're going ahead with the same in 2024, is to have the event in Wellington as a twilight event. Now, you may remember part of that controversy last year was the fact that we were moving the ceremony away from the 26th, but another part of the controversy was that we weren't doing that same change in Dubbo. And you remember that we were a bit snookered by the federal government, who told us that we weren't allowed to do that in Dubbo, but we could do that in Wellington, related to how many conferees, how many new citizens we had coming out of Wellington and Dubbo throughout the year. The magic number was 20. Because the number was less than 20 in Wellington, we could change that date. And interestingly enough, after we made that decision and after we went ahead with that in 2023, the federal government actually did change the Citizenship Ceremonies Code so that across the nation now, all councils have got that flexibility to hold the ceremony away from the day. The main change we've made for 2024 on Australia Day, Tony, is we've just pushed the start time back an hour. It was warm. It was 5:30 p.m. in 2023, and that was still fairly warm in the afternoon. We've pushed it back to start at 6:30 p.m. And most of the rest of it's still the same. And you'll also remember that the other change we made for both Dubbo and Wellington was not only having the ambassador speak, not only having council speak, but we added an Aboriginal speaker to give a bit of context about the 60,000 years of history that this nation has had with Aboriginal people. And I think that went down very well. There was a good crowd in Wellington in 2023. I hope there'll be another good crowd in 2024. In fact, I hope it'll be a bigger crowd in 2024 because of that slightly later start time. And I think it'll be another great ceremony. The feedback we got was very good. And the other thing is that we've got our ambassadors for both Dubbo and Wellington that have just been announced. And in Wellington, the ambassador is Rhys Muldoon. Now, he's been on film and television for many years, probably done some theatre and radio, etc. as well, but probably best known for his TV. He did 5 seasons on House Husbands and also was in the ABC series Les Norton. But even people of our age, Tony, might remember him for some of the older series like McLeod's Daughters and Blue Heelers. So certainly he's had a good long history in film, and I think people in Wellington will be very excited to hear Rhys's story and to meet Rhys and talk to Rhys.
Okay. Now, the work has started on Pioneer Park in fixing up the erosion that was caused by all the floods along the riverbank. So how's that progressing?
It is progressing, and that's the important thing here. One of the things that's been fascinating over the last year, Tony, if I go back a year, the number of people that rang me, emailed me, contacted me via various means, the vast majority of those contacts were about our roads, about our infrastructure damage that had occurred because of all the extra rain we had and the flooding that we had. And Pioneer Park was obviously one of those examples where the water that came down there was flowing along the river there, or not in the river. It would have been nice to stay in the river, but unfortunately it wasn't all in the river, and did a significant amount of damage along there. One of the things that we've certainly looked at in all the flood repairs we've been doing is not just putting it back to the same way, because presumably if we do that, the next time there's floods, which we know that will happen again, then you'll see the same damage occur. So we've made some changes to Pioneer Park and just rerouted or changed where cars will go, change the surface that will create there, and try to create an environment that will be able to handle the next high water flow that goes through there without doing the same amount of damage. And again, just looking at that area there, you see where the water's been stripped away. I remember standing in some of those areas there, in half a metre of the depth of roots of some of those trees were all that dirt, all that soil had just been washed away with that water. So we're getting there with that. We're doing those repairs, and again, I think we'll get to the stage where we've got a better solution at the end of all of that.
Okay, I must admit I haven't been past there in a while, so I'm just curious as to what the plans are for the roadway, Showground Road, that goes past there, because that's always been a bit of a problem after each flood with the damage that's caused. So is there any plans to mitigate that?
Not so much the roadway. The roadway is basically being repaired to make sure that's back to how it was there. Again, the problem we have there, Tony, is once the Bell breaks its banks, then you get some very high flows across there. It'd be nice to have that area of road a bit higher there, but we just don't have the funds to be able to go and do that. So at this stage, the high flow that was damaging around Pioneer Park was the main priority. That road will be put back and hopefully kept into some sort of reasonable condition the next time the flooding occurs.
Okay. Now, the EV charging stations have been installed at the library, which is great to see. How are they going, though?
Yeah, we've got EV chargers that we've installed both at Wellington in the library and at Wellington Caves. And one of the things that we looked at when we made the decision to go ahead with that was that Dubbo was well looked after. Dubbo's got Tesla superchargers. Dubbo's got NRMA chargers. There's also a charger down at our Visitor Information Centre. And there was an opportunity that came up with some state government money to expand the EV charging network. So we put in for some of that grant money. We were successful with that, so we put that money in towards Wellington and, as I said, the library and the caves there. And I haven't got any data to tell you the exact usage statistics from those, but certainly the information that we've received back is that people are using them. We're getting feedback from the community in Wellington saying they are seeing people pull in there and use those. So that's a good step forward. It means that people might pull in and charge there, and while they're there, they've got the chance to look around some Wellington shops, look at some of the areas in Wellington, at the caves, it's one example, but even in the library just down the CBD of Wellington. So again, it gives people that opportunity to stop there rather than say, well, there's nowhere to charge my car, I'll keep going through to Dubbo.
Matthew, it's interesting to see that Lightsource BP has sold 5 of its Australian solar projects to a Chinese-based Beijing Energy International Australia, a company that's fairly big in this area. And this has affected the Wellington project, which is in operation, and the new Wellington North project, which is under construction. So it's interesting how with the solar farms, they tend to have various stages of development, and you get all these different companies coming and going, buying and selling as the project moves along to different stages. I guess we're going to see more of that. Plus, it's interesting to note too that there's been a huge increase in the size of the res announced by Penny Sharp yesterday, which will take us right out to, I think, the 2030s in the build-out, particularly with transmission lines and the whole shebang. So a lot more development down the pipeline.
There is no doubt about that, and I was actually texting back and forth with Penny Sharp a couple of days ago about that expansion that was announced, as you said, yesterday. So the initial size of the res, which encompasses 3 local government areas, Warrumbungle Shire Council, Mid-Western Regional Council, and of course Dubbo Regional Council, the original size was 3 gigawatts. That announcement yesterday confirmed what we suspected was happening because there'd been some discussion about it already, but confirmed that now will go up to a 6 gigawatt size. And they're talking about initially in the early stages it'll be 4.5 gigs, but then expand out to 6 gigawatts by somewhere around the year 2038. And I've been saying this for some time to people. When some people say that the solar farms, the wind farms, the various renewable energy projects aren't as good as a mine from an economic point of view because you only have the real injection during the build stage. That's correct, but don't forget that the build stage will probably go for 15 years. And there are times when people have a mine in their area, the mine life might only be 15 or 20 years. So it's probably not that different to a mine site in that regard. And I do think we'll see a lot of activity, Tony, over the next 10 years. But given the fact that they're talking about that 6 gigawatts taking out to 2038, well, there's 15 years of activity we're going to see in this area. It's interesting what you talk about with that consolidation with Lightsource BP. I actually think what's happening at the moment with a lot of these renewable projects is there are companies that are specialising in different parts of it. And I think you will see a little bit of bedding in and settling down for all these companies. And so I think there are some companies that are specialising in doing the initial stages of an application and getting a project ready to go, but they don't want to be the ones that actually build out the project. There's other companies that might come along and actually build those projects out, but they're not best situated to run those projects, and other companies might be there saying, well, we'll run the project. So I think you will see a few of those, and that's where it's really important for council to play a role there for what we put in place, any agreements that we have in place, any voluntary planning agreements, for example, any of those funds, those community benefit funds that flow through to the community. When any of those projects are sold, those are still part of the project. We don't have to go in and negotiate those again. So it's very important that we as council understand some of those implications and understand that there will be some changes as time goes on, but be ready to basically work with those new proponents that come along, but also have the various contracts in place. So it's still exciting, Tony. I still think the transformation that will occur in Wellington as a result of the RES will be dramatic. And if it's not, then I don't think we've done our job as a council well enough. And one of those things that we're doing at the moment, Tony, is the REACT Centre. The Deputy Mayor, Richard Ivey, brought forward a notice of motion about the business plan development for that. I'd been talking about a REACT building or a REACT concept for some time. I know Penny Sharp, the Minister for Energy, had been talking about that as well. And we want to really get something that's a lasting legacy. And Richard Ivey said, well, let's formalise this a bit more and create a business plan from that. And that's being worked on as we speak. The beauty of that is that what we will see in Wellington, I hope, and this is part of the dream, is we'll see somewhere that you'll have as a tourist attraction, a visitor centre. People can learn about renewables, and also a training centre, because these various proponents are talking about one of the big challenges for them is to make sure that they've got, in some way, shape or form, some training. Rather than send people off to Sydney or maybe even overseas to get some of that training, we want that training to occur right here in Wellington. So I think that's exciting. And again, that's a real challenge for us to squeeze every possible advantage we can out of the renewable energy zone that's sitting right there in Wellington. And of course, just for those that aren't aware, REACT Centre stands for Renewable Energy Awareness and Career Training Centre.
Okay, very good. Now, Matthew, of course, the road situation has improved vastly throughout the LGA, including the Saxa Road, which they're all perfectable roads now. But of course, a big bone of contention in Wellington and a big effect on our economy is the closure of the Saxa Road due to what's required along the causeway, which is just a plug of concrete to fix it. But apparently Fisheries are not keen on allowing council to do that. So the next big question is, well, how's the timelines going with the bridge so that people can actually use Saxa now that it's fixed up?
Certainly, we've got tenders out at the moment as we speak. So companies are out there looking through those tender documents or the tender closes next year. That'll come back to a February meeting of council to make that decision on the tender. And then once that decision is made, obviously that company can get started on that. Now, it is a design and construct, so we expect the time frame for that to be a little over 12 months. So I'd be confident that, say, by the end of April 2025, we'll have a bridge in place there at that Coomabella crossing across the Mitchell Creek there, and then that will be the time that Saxa Road will be fully opened up to normal traffic again, which is a bit disappointing. It's certainly a long time frame, but again, this is part of that process I've talked about, Tony, about making sure that we don't just fix things the way they were. If we need to do it better, if we need to fix it so that it's going to be better for the long term, then I think that's our responsibility to make sure we do that. At this stage, council is paying for that. The approximation that we've got, obviously tenders are out there, but we think it'll be around about the $3 million mark. But we also are working hard on the state government to try and get that funding so that we aren't paying for that. The state government's covering it. There are some people who have said that we shouldn't be going ahead with it at the moment. Wait until we get the money from the state government. But council has resolved that it's too important a project. We can't wait and sit around with our hands, sitting on our hands and waiting for that decision from the state government. We've got to go full steam ahead with it. So we are doing that with that tender process and getting that done as quickly as we can, even though it's still a long time frame.
Okay, well, that'll certainly be a most welcome situation if that happens in that time frame. It'll make a big difference. Anyway, we've been talking to Matthew Dickerson, the Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. Thank you very much, Matthew.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you not just for this conversation, but supporting council with the communication all throughout the year. It's a great opportunity to talk to you and your listeners. I think absolutely vital. I take very seriously my role as spokesperson for council, and part of that role is to make sure that I am communicating with the community, but I couldn't do it without people like you and without Binjang to be able to have that voice out there to the community. So thank you for that. Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to all your listeners. Look forward to a very exciting 2024.
Okay, look, Merry Christmas to you and everybody in council and all your families. It's been great talking to you, Matthew. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickerson from Dubbo Regional Council.